What's up, boys?
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
So these shows don't typically get the greatest live viewership, but the last one wound up, we got like, I think 1,000 views on my Twitter, and then I think there's like 3,500 or 3,800 on the actual YouTube stream.
Wow.
So it looks like it's like one of those ones that has longevity where people pick up later on down the road and stuff. But tonight's I'm gonna take a wild guess here, and just knowing Rob, I'm going to guess we're going to have a lot of anti-Italian discrimination tonight. And Rob's basically...
Italy doesn't exist, so that can't happen.
Rob's going to say he doesn't like the movie. I know. I'm just guessing. No.
Yeah, we definitely haven't texted about it most of the day.
No foreknowledge at all. I just know you hate Italian. So, all right. So initial thoughts on this. All right. So everybody, please hit like, please hit subscribe. You guys know the drill. Rob and
let's ask how many people are watching this before we actually record this. How many of our viewers watch the movie? You don't have to. I'm just...
Yeah, no. If everybody, how about this? I bet you have a better chance. Like, if you have not seen the movie and you're here to just check out what our thoughts are on it, let us know in the chat if you have not seen it. Because I think a lot of people did try to watch it or have seen it in the past or something. But this movie was, this is my favorite depiction of a saint. Like this movie. Now, the problem is it's hard to find the full version in Italian with English subtitles. It's very difficult to find. If you don't own the DVD, you can find the full version with English dubbed, or you can find an edited version with the English subtitles in Italian. Guys, just so you know, he dies at the end. There's gonna be some spoilers. But if you find the full version in Italian with English subtitles, to me, this is the movie that actually pushed me towards having a devotion with Padre Pio, or devotion to Padre Pio. So, Father Nick, you like this movie too, right?
I think from our text today, I fall somewhere between you and Rob. You put it, I think, as an A+. As I watched it again, there's a couple things that I thought were a little bit modern, like a little bit of an injection into modernism in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, I think I fall somewhere between you and Rob. Rob's not a big fan. You're a huge fan. I'm a pretty big fan of it, but I just have to name a couple issues with how they made it. But I do think that there was something very close to his life and how they produced it.
So this is actually based on actual video of Padre Pio saying the traditional mass versus Populum. That actually did happen.
As far as I know, and Father Nix might know more about this, but in many places in Europe, they offer or did offer mass ad orientem, but literally. So
facing the people,
facing east, just east happened to be facing versus Populum in some churches.
So now, what year did Padre Pio?
The Vatican's one example of that, Rob. But I think that final video you see of his life is not that. I think that's already the injection of modernism, but that wasn't a mistake in the movie. That does happen at the end of his life, but he never did the Novus Ordo.
It was the 65, right?
Right. It wouldn't, the 65 would have had Italian in the readings, and I doubt he did that. I think what they did is flip the altar on him when he was old, but it was still at the very earliest the 62 missal, hopefully something earlier, but it wouldn't have been the 60. It was definitely not the 68 or 69 missal. I doubt it was a 64, 65. Point is, it was a traditional mass facing the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is historically accurate. That him facing the people. There is actual video of him at his last mass, which is what they show in the movie.
Now, but Anthony, him getting confused on if like the Our Fathers before the Roman canon and stuff, I doubt that is accurate.
You think even at the last mass he offered, maybe his just cognitive skills were,
Yeah, a lot of the saints. I mean, it's amazing. The saints do seem very cognitively unimpaired up until the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, you have to realize this movie's made in the year 2000, right? So
And it was a made-for-TV miniseries.
yeah, and this is before the Spotlight thing even happens in 2000, right? Spotlight's in 2002. So like people still have a very high favorable view of even John Paul II, Paul VI. Like you're talking the amount of people who have changed their opinion on some of these issues. It wasn't even remotely on people's minds back then in the year 2000. In the year 2000, you had the Society, and that was about it. Like,
Sure.
it was the Society, and you had the Novus Ordo, and it was just the way it was. So the idea that they're going to throw some of these things in, that doesn't surprise me. What I loved about it, like of course the liturgical stuff, and like at the end of the movie he talks about what a good man Paul VI was, and the scene where John Paul II comes and visits him as was he just a priest when he visited him?
Yeah,
he was just a priest. He wasn't a bishop yet.
Yeah.
So, but that actually did happen. In like so if you watch the John Paul II movie, they show that as well. I mean, I'm going by these two movies. I don't actually know for a fact. Because there's a movie about John Paul II, and they show him going to Padre Pio to ask him to pray for somebody, that somebody needed a miracle healing, and he did pray for that person, and that person was healed. And that's in the John Paul II movie. So I'm pretty sure that meeting did take place, and I'm pretty sure, there is some historical reality to that. But the thing that I loved about the movie was early on in his life, it shows that he always had this very close connection to Our Lady and our Lord, and even had visions of Our Lady as a child, and just had this deep desire to be a priest from childhood.
I think the movie does a terrible job showing that, honestly.
Really?
I think, yeah.
When he sees that monk and they go inside the thing, and he has the little figurines he's showing them and stuff.
3 hour and 20-minute movie, and they spend 30 seconds on it. I don't know.
Well, hey guys, let's hold on. What if we just gave a basic of Padre Pio's life? Because one of the things I've noticed on YouTube is you have such a huge bandwidth of people who are minimally educated and maximally educated. There might be a couple people watching who don't even know the basics of Padre Pio. So Anthony, you're the huge fan. And would you just give us you don't have to give us dates and stuff, but just give us.
I'm not going to be good with that. No. Like I don't know dates and stuff.
Let's talk Padre Pio before we talk the movie.
Yeah. So somebody said that I heard Padre Pio could bilocate, which they do show an example of this in the movie as well, where he's the priest who's actually interviewing him had an experience where he was, and he says, so
that's one of the ones. That's one of the ones I picked for my sections. Okay,
so that'll be one of your scenes. Yeah. So look, he was a priest in Italy, in San Giovanni Rotondo. He was a Franciscan. He bore the stigmata. There's many comparisons to him and the real Saint Francis, I believe. So I think a lot of people have this opinion of Saint Francis as if he's brother, sun, sister, moon, hippie Francis, right? Where I really think the real Saint Francis is probably more like Padre Pio was, a more of a no nonsense, hardcore, ascetic man. I mean, when you read about Saint Francis's rule, what really broke Saint Francis's heart is that they want, like, he didn't even want them to have a house. He wanted them to just go and like walk around. I really think that
did you ever hear? I was working at an Italian restaurant as a teenager, and I even as a non-traditionalist, just a pretty middle of the road Catholic in high school, I loved Saint Francis, and I was talking to somebody at work about him, and he called him Saint Francis the Sissy, and I was so mad at that. And somehow he's got this name to be this hippie saint. My first time to Italy, I stayed with a family. I was 19, and they weren't even like super well catechized Catholics. And I was like, yeah, it's really too bad. They took me to Assisi for the first time, and I said, it's really too bad people say things in America like St. Francis the Sissy. And the guy my age of the house was like, well, what is that? He didn't speak a lot of English. We had to get out the English-Italian dictionary, and it was effeminato in Italian. And even this guy who wasn't the best Catholic was like, no. And I love that even he knew a not super well catechized Catholic how wrong it was to frame Francis as effeminate or weak or hippie.
Well, they try to make it like he was able to speak to the animals, right? Like, so they really want to set him in this, but yeah, like he was that holy that even creation would listen to him. You
That's
know,
right.
it's like real holiness. That's all that was. It's that when he spoke, even you ever see that video of the dog sitting in front of adoration just at complete attention?
No.
There's a video online. It's just a German shepherd who is just fixated on the Holy Eucharist in adoration, and he's just fixated on it. It's a really wild video, but it just shows you that even all of creation can recognize holiness. It's not even just human beings, you know. And I think that Francis, they've tried to cherry pick these little instances in his life to give him that. I mean, even Pope Francis does that, right? They use the Assisi meetings and all these things that they try to make it like Francis was just this ecumenical, just like, let's all just get along. No, Francis went to
the Sultan.
Went to the Sultan and tried to convert him. It wasn't an ecumenical meeting, you know,
knowing his head may be cut off for it.
Right. And I think
he was like the one guy who tried for martyrdom and was too nice to get it.
Yeah. he literally wanted to be martyred.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't. I mean, imagine telling them they have to follow Christ to be saved, expecting to get your head cut off, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
You know, Anthony's a lot like that. You just want to, but you're like, he's not so bad, actually.
I do have a little bit of that.
I don't want to be martyred. You all want to martyr me. That's the difference.
But he's too nice. So even when he gets you mad, you can never bring yourself to hurt him.
So all right, so this movie, I think, look, they spend a little too much time on his childhood. I think we kind of just, like, Rob's kind of right. It is a little hard to follow the storyline. Like the cinematography is not phenomenal or anything. What I love the most about it is how Sergio Castellitto encaptured the spirit of Saint Pio. I really think he did an amazing job of capturing what Saint Pio was actually like.
I agree. Yeah.
And the first clip I have is only a minute long, but it starts off. I should have maybe backed it up a little bit to show a little bit of context. Guys, if I'm sniffling tonight, please don't mind me. I'm coming down with something. The only reason I don't sound that bad is because I'm actually, like, I had to take Afrin before this because I was so clogged up. But
and if I puke at the screen, just forgive me because I was yakking yesterday.
Yes. We were going to push this show to tomorrow, but we didn't want to break the last Thursday of the month thing. We were worried that we would get out of that rhythm and maybe the series wouldn't last. So, the first scene I picked, it's a woman comes to him and she can't afford a shawl. So she doesn't have like a veil at mass. And he's like, go get yourself a shawl. She goes, I can't afford it. And he goes into the poor box and he takes the money out and he gives it to her. So I didn't show that in my clip, but what happens right afterward is where my clip picks up. And I picked the Italian with English subtitles because I think you get a good feeling for what Francis is like. Rob, why don't you pull that one clip up and let's just start with that. And then we'll pick one of Father Nix's clips.
Pio!
This is basically me and Anthony, by the way. I'm the guy on screen now, and Anthony's like, Pio, just watch.
There is that dynamic.
Che è successo? Superiore.
Guarda un po'.
Che c'è?
Qualcuno ha rubato gli ori della Madonna.
No. Oh, mamma mia.
Ora io mi chiedo, ma chi può aver fatto una cosa del genere? Sei stato tu?
No. Stavolta no.
Stavolta no. Meno male, va bene. Allora dimmi, secondo te chi può essere stato?
Ah, io che cosa ne so? Qualche poveraccio. Sarà andato dalla Madonna e gli ha detto: a te che ti serve tutto quest'oro? Dammelo a me. Dammelo a me. Che ci compri il pane per i figli. E la Madonna gliel'ha dato.
Beh, quindi secondo te è andata proprio a così?
Se conosco bene la Madonna, sì, andate proprio così.
Va.
Se si mette a strillare sull'altare maggiore, va bene?
Che meglio.
È duro che un braccialetto, poi.
C'era pure la collana, sempre questo.
Era Pavel, sì.
Va bene, va.
It's imitation gold. Like, I laughed so hard at that scene. It's just so amazing. He's like, who knows? Some poor devil. He probably said to our lady, "What do you need those jewels for? Give them to me so I can feed my family." Like, just the way he encaps, like, he just gets that Italian, just that Italian sense of humor and just the dryness. And I don't know, would you think that's lying there?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to be the party pooper pretty early on in today's podcast. That's like the one scene I don't like for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, he admits he's lying. So he's lying in front of the Blessed Sacrament and a statue of Our Lady. No saint would ever lie. And so, like, I've read a very long book on Pio's life, and there's certainly no evidence he would lie. It's connected to my second problem with the scene, and this is very prominent in modernist Italy, this notion that you can steal from the coffers for the poor, but never for yourself. I mean, Italy's a really funny place. There's almost a better understanding in Italy for the priest who's kind of got to, like, if he's straight, sleep around a little bit. But if you steal from the poor, you're a really bad priest in Italy, you know? And like, so this notion that you can steal from whatever is going to be used for even the building up of the church for somebody else who's poor. I mean, this is exactly what we see in the Vatican right now. This whole thing of like, let's sell the chalices and let's sell the art and give it to the poor. But someone told me once, St. Francis of Assisi himself said, poverty stops at the altar. You guys see what that means? Poverty stops at the altar. He means you guys should live poor lives, but we want the best items for liturgy. We want the holiest and the most beautiful vestments and everything else. So sorry, I don't mean to squash your scene there, but there's no way he would have lied. And I find it hard to believe he would justify. I guess if you said it was for a veil, that's pretty liturgical. So that's good. So I guess my major problem isn't, because you can take money for the poor. That's fine. I guess my only problem is the lying. He wouldn't have lied.
Yeah, I knew you were going to have a little scruple about that, but for me, it
a little scruple.
I knew. I'm not even kidding. I'm like, I know Father Nix is gonna, because we've had this conversation about like, is it okay to lie when you're? But
well, is it?
No.
No, it's never okay to lie.
Yeah, so I would say
no. It's never
you could
okay.
have like mental reservations. And,
no,
and
that's
stuff
an old
like,
game.
But you can, lying's wrong.
No,
so I knew that was going to
mental reservation. You still have to say the right. I mean,
yes.
You can have, so every saint agrees you can never speak a lie. There is a disagreement on saints as far as can you use deceitful words as long as the denotation is okay, as long as the denotation is true. Can you have some deceitful words? But 100% of the saints say with your mouth you can never say something that is actually a lie.
Yeah. So to me, it just kind of encapsulated this, or encapsulated. I don't know, guys. I'm a little sick. I got cold meds going through my system, but it more just showed like an innocence about him, right? I don't know, there was an innocence about him, and it was the humor of it that I really liked. That even the frustration of the other priest with him, knowing that it was probably wrong for him to do that, but his heart was in the right place. And
I think they could have given that same feeling a different way. They could have done a similar argument, but without him lying or something like that.
No.
Yeah,
right.
He should have just kind of played stupid and not said anything instead of saying flat out no, it wasn't. But
right. But you're right. It's a real Italian sense of humor. Like, Anthony, you and I have talked about this off the air. I think, you Italians just explode everything and get it out. We Irish, we put all the dirt under the rug, and then it comes out sideways 40 years later, and there's all these grudges, and it's nasty. So, like, I do love the Italian way of just kind of yelling it out instead of putting dirt under the rug, because our Irish way of putting dirt under the rug just leads to a lot of grudges. It's not healthy.
Well, my favorite scene in the movie, I can't wait to play it. It's a long scene, but it's a scene where if you don't see this scene in the Italian, you don't understand the power of this scene. So we're going to hold off on that because it's later on in the movie, and I want to let you to get to some of your clips. But if you guys have never seen the movie in Italian with English subtitles, stick around for this scene, because it's
I think all the ones all the clips I picked are also Italian with English subtitles.
Good, because you really
Rob,
get a sense
Did
of.
Rob pick any clips?
I did not get a chance to rip any
He
clips.
didn't even
and
like it enough to get any clips.
Well, that and your guys' clips were the better portions.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
What's the first clip you picked, Father Nix?
I could open my Google Drive. I gave them to you, Rob, kind of in chronological order, but I can open my drive.
So the first one is labeled Absolution.
Let me see here, real. Let me see. Let's do. No, I think that's given it to you alphabetically in the Google Drive. Can you do the stigmata?
Yeah, the stigmata.
I ripped that scene too. So
did you? Okay, now did you remember there was 2 stigmata? Did you do the one under the tree or the one in the church?
One in the church in front of the crucifix.
Let's do. Oh, that's the one I did too. Okay, so you can just run one of those. It doesn't matter if it's mine or Anthony's. But
yeah, they're actually starting at the exact same place. The difference is Anthony's is 2 minutes longer than yours. So we can start that one.
Do you want to do 2 or 4 minute one, Anthony?
No, we'll do the 2 minute because we got a lot of clips. You have 5 clips,
Okay.
so.
Well, here I'll just. This is the longer one, so we can just whenever you guys want to stop it.
Okay.
We'll try to stop it after 30 seconds to say something. So.
Yeah, just because
tu vedi tutto. Io mi vorrei prendere la sofferenza degli altri su di me come hai fatto tu. Però tu sapevi come fare. E invece non lo so. Gesù. Tu avete la sofferenza, la miseria, no? Dice da solo questa miseria non la posso sopportare. Dimmelo tu che devi fare.
So he gets the stigmata earlier on in the movie as well. That's what we were talking about, and he gets it for the first time where it's really just a brief incident where he gets the stigmata. But that was a good scene too, man. We should probably rip that one because it just it kind of showed how shocked he was. But the reason my clip is longer is because I wanted to get to what happens after the stigmata, because that's kind of the important part of this. So, and it's something you and I had actually spoken about. So let's play the whole thing. I remember why my clip is longer.
Do we know, did Padre Pio have all the wounds? Or
he had all 5 wounds, I'm pretty sure.
Because the movie really just shows the hands.
And his side it shows.
Does it?
You'll see in this.
Okay.
Like this part, we can just talk over. You don't even have to pause it. As long as long as you have a little talking going on over it, then I think it'll
turn it down for now.
So it's the next scene that I wanted to show because of what he says to Augustino.
Do we want to? So that was the Father Nix's portion of it. So, Father, did you have anything you wanted to?
Oh, no, that's all right.
Say about that.
Yeah, well, maybe I do actually. Just that I think sometimes we have this romanticized idea of the saints and their sufferings, and sometimes we could look at Padre Pio and say, there's probably single moms out there saying well, maybe they don't say this, but I'm tempted to say I could handle the stigmata, but not this, this, and this. And like, one, you always realize, or rather it's numerous times in the movie, that it's actually the shame of his life that is more embarrassing than the stigmata, or that's actually part of it. Just being rejected by the church, I think, is a greater suffering than the stigmata. But even the stigmata suffering you really see is with him on the floor. There's nothing romanticized about it. It's not like these, holes through his hands that he just got to show people and feel holy all day and get to work miracles. I like that scene because I don't know what actually happened in real life when he got the stigmata, but Jesus wasn't rejoicing he was praising God that he got to die for humanity and honor the Father, of course. But like, why I love that scene is you see how hard the stigmata was on him. It wasn't just something cool to write home about or say, hey, I'm like St. Francis, or this means I get to work miracles. You see his loneliness, you see the physical pain. You don't, some people are
imagine walking around with holes in your feet, bleeding, constant bleeding. You got to think about how painful that is. Well, so you'll see, like something you said there is the reason I continued the clip.
Okay.
Something you specifically said there is why I continued the clip. So you'll see.
One problem that I have with this movie is that, except for a few points throughout the movie, you're never really sure at what point in his life or what point in like just the historical timeline this is happening. So like, I know in the movie this is the second time he's
you don't know if this
stigmata.
Is this during World War I or
well,
World War
so
II, or...
in the first time he got the stigmata was in 1918. So like this movie seems to concentrate a lot on poverty, like how he mentioned just in this clip, the suffering of the poor basically. But if you think about it, the first time he got the stigmata in 1918, he's probably more concerned about the hundreds and thousands of Italian soldiers that just died in World War I.
Right.
So it seems to kind of gloss over maybe some of the larger issues that are probably going on.
Well, you do see so many mothers and sisters and brothers come to him asking about
in
their
that
loved ones.
In the one scene, though,
I think there was two scenes where that happens, where one's in the church and then another one where he's walking through and everybody's just like, this one, I'm missing this one. And he's like, he'll be home soon. He's not coming home.
And in the extended version, you actually do see him get recruited in the army, which did happen in real life.
Yeah. Yep. And he was just so sick with all these ailments that he actually wasn't able to go to war. So, but continue the clip because you'll see what Father Nick said before is very important.
Pio. Ma che è successo? Qualche cosa? Poi, Pio. Dico, per favore, va a preparare una tazza di brodo caldo per Pio. Vai, forza, va. Vieni, Pio. Appoggiati a me, vieni. Stelliti sul letto, vieni, Pio. Stai tranquillo, vieni. Vieni, stai. Vieni. Vieni. Adesso siamo soli, no? Che è successo? Me lo vuoi raccontare? Allora?
Non lo so, Paolino, non me lo so spiegare. Voi sentite le voci? Il dolore che c'era sul Calvario. Paolino era lì. E ho sentito che lui moriva per me.
So right here, you'll see him aim for his right side. You see, like that to me. He's grabbing his side there.
He says a spear. So
spear pierced me.
Reading the subtitles, I think they changed a lot of the words for the dub.
100%. These are the signs of the Lord. Now watch what he says.
Continuano a sanguinare, Pio. Io devo chiamare un dottore.
No.
Ma devo morire dissanguato.
No, Paolino. Non chiamare nessuno. Il Signore mi guarirà. Noi dobbiamo solo pregare.
See, I think it's a different scene. Okay, yeah, it's a different scene. Shoot.
Oh,
So he talks about the shame. He
Yeah,
actually
he talks about the
specifically
shame a lot.
says, so there's a scene. I'm sorry about that,
Well,
guys.
that's all right.
There's a
Look-
scene where they ask him, does it hurt? And he's like, no, it's not that, it's the shame of it, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just so ashamed. Like, why me? Why, like, I don't want anybody seeing these wounds. Like he would have been, I think he would have been much happier suffering an invisible stigmata, right? Where you had the pain of the stigmata without the visible signs of it, because I think the visible signs of it embarrassed him terribly.
Because I think he didn't feel worthy to be following in Francis's footsteps.
Yeah, and I think that so many people thought he was trying to make a spectacle, and he just was such a loyal son to the church. Whenever they'd punish him, he just followed their punishments.
Right.
It had nothing to do with making a spectacle. The last thing he wanted to be was a spectacle. He really did just want to lend himself to be a suffering servant. Like he just wanted to share in the sufferings of the Lord, you know?
And you see that, you know, with the diocesan priest that shows up, who's trying to get to the bottom. Is this guy a total fraud? Is he a charlatan? I mean, that's, in some sense, that is the main plot line of the story. You have this diocesan, I guess he's like either a vicar or Monsignor or someone show up from the start all the way to the end. And I like that. I like the way they did the storytelling through this guy of, you know, because he sort of represents the church. At least, no, I shouldn't say that. This guy represents the hierarchy at that point to Padre Pio. And so you see him from the start doubting. And then one of the clips I picked towards the end is this diocesan priest's, I don't know if we can call it conversion, but something along those lines happens. But he sort of, that does represent how the hierarchy doubted all this supernatural stuff. And you see that, you know, you see modernism creeping in even before Vatican II, that it's like, hey, the church needs science, not these spooky medieval weird things that you're doing of like flying and bilocating and having the stigmata. They clearly don't even believe, but their idea is this is actually hurting the faith of the people, because Catholics need to catch up to the modern world and put science ahead of the supernatural.
They need to believe in evolution. They can't believe in any of this stigmata stuff. And you see it in the hierarchy. The one guy,
Gemelli.
Yeah. He's just got an axe to grind with him. Like he just can't stand Pio. And it's just the constant, this man.
That's actually like, one of the, that's one of the scenes I picked. If we could look at that one, it was called, oh no, I guess I didn't. I think I got rid of that one. Gemelli, when he says, "Leave me alone." I love that scene when he's just like,
listen, let's play my last scene and then we'll just go through all of yours.
Yeah, okay.
So while Rob's got mine loaded up, let's go. Cool. This is by far, I think, if you want to encapsulate the whole heart of the movie,
you love this one.
Scene right here is just such an amazing scene.
Rob, this is a good scene. I agree.
But you didn't hear it in Italian.
I know I didn't, but
you have no idea.
I saw it in Italian. If you,
but hearing it and hearing the way he yells and the way he handles it, this is what made me fall in love with Padre Pio right here. This scene, because it made me see holiness takes a very different forms.
It made you realize you could slap someone and still be a saint.
Yes, and that's what it is. People have this very soft, gentle understanding of what meek means. Now, Padre Pio was a meek man, but when you see how Padre Pio handles something, you'll see what meek really means. Moses was meek, right? Like you'll see what this actually means. It's not that I speak Italian. I don't speak.
He doesn't even speak English.
Barely. So let's go through this scene. It's my favorite scene in the movie.
Okay, and you tell me when you want me to pause it to say something. We're gonna have to do it a couple times throughout.
Yeah, we'll have to do it a couple times. This is a 5-minute scene, and all 5 minutes are important. So.
Tutta questa confusione qua? Sappiamo che vi vogliono trasferire. Chi ve lo dice sto fesserie?
Dicono che nei fenomeni attribuiti a lei non c'è niente di soprannaturale.
Già, lo piaga me lo sono fatto da solo, no? Della curia di Manfredonia. Dice che il vescovo ha presentato denuncia contro di voi.
And just for the record, this is after they had a doctor examine him, and the doctor found that it was supernatural.
Yeah,
that there was no natural.
There's parts where the guy says, "You're just coming up with this in your head," and he's like, go ahead, imagine the holes in your hands. Let's see how they pop up,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like you can't think hard enough where you concentrate enough where holes just pop up in your hand. Like you have to understand what the alternative is. He's a psychotic lunatic who continuously injures himself for 50 years, or he
Right.
really had the stigmata.
Right. That's a good point.
Like there is no in between here. I mean, this man had to have continuously been hammering nails through his hands for what? What did he gain from it? The man spent his life in seclusion, not allowed to offer confessions, like have public masses. He wasn't allowed to have them.
You know, he didn't have any personal possessions. He wasn't, you know, making bank off of it or anything like that. So.
Quanto spreco, Tutta sta carta per accendermi il rogo. Madonna mia. Ma tanto che mi possono fare? Io sono stato già crocifisso. Sì, ma a Cristo non l'avevano accusato di avere un amante, né di fare orge in convento. Il vescovo di Macedonia è un pretendegno, un fetente, ruba i soldi della curia. È anche un gran puttaniere. Chi sei? Chi sei tu per parlare così di un vescovo della Chiesa? Chi sei? Sei un libertino, un giocatore d'azzardo, un pescatore incallito, chi sei? Impara l'umiltà. L'umiltà innanzitutto. E ringrazio di te stamani. Io ti facevo la faccia così di mappina. Non so caccia Satana con Satana. Vattene! Vattene via, vai!
You know what we could do, Rob, is while he's out in the woods, we could kind of skip through that because it takes about it's like a 2-minute clip of him just out in the woods. Like we could watch it for a second just for anybody that didn't see it, but we don't have to watch that.
I like the line that you can't fight Satan with Satan.
Yeah, and even he's like, you know, this bishop, he's even a whoremonger. He goes, "Get out, you lech, you gambler, you veteran sinner. Like, get out of my face. Who are you to speak?"
Okay,
about
so
a
wait,
prince
real
of the
quick
church?
before we go on, I have a challenge here. You guys run a podcast. Half of it is criticizing the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And actually, I have an answer, so I don't want you to take this question as super harsh. I have an answer to defend you guys. I think my answer is actually better than what you're going to come up with. But what would you say before I defend you against that accusation in light of that scene?
I would say I don't criticize specific cardinals for their sin. I criticize when they are messing with church doctrine, and I'm not going to pretend that's not happening.
And that's the right answer, because he calls him a whoremonger. There's a difference between faith and morals. Not that it's not a problem if a priest is, messing around. And obviously, like, children have to be protected. But when we're talking about like other moral failings, adult, those types of things, that's where Padre Pio steps in for the sake, not of the bishop, for the sake of the layman.
Yeah.
But St. Paul in the Bible says, avoid a heretic. So even St. Paul expects lay people to recognize heresy and to avoid it. I have a whole blog post up about, there's a weird myth in the traditional world right now that you can't recognize a heretic in the hierarchy until there's an imperfect council or a canonical trial. That is totally false. I have a blog post with numerous saints quoted, including St. Robert Bellarmine, that shows you can and should recognize a heretic in the hierarchy. So moral failings, unless it like involves children and defensive kids and stuff like that, you shouldn't expose.
We're not
heresy,
calling out Cardinal Supich because he's doing something specific. We're talking about when they try to twist doctrine in matters that can confuse the laity, and the laity are desperate for clarity, and the hierarchy are not giving it to them.
That's right. And that's why two laymen on a podcast can call out. Now, you better be really sure you're right. And I've seen enough of you guys shows that I know you are right about knowing these things are heresies that are being said. But that's why, is because there's numerous saints, especially in the first millennium of Catholicism, that expected any Catholic to recognize heresy. So the difference is faith versus morals. You shouldn't be calling out morals, but you should be calling out faith. Or rather, you shouldn't be calling out failures in morals, which is why he can slap him. But you should be calling out failures in in faith. And that's where I don't think you're a hypocrite for putting up that scene while running a podcast that half of it criticizes the hierarchy.
So
yeah, that's a good example right there.
One question, kind of about
what Joseph Diodati says on screen. That's right, because that's blasphemy and it's heresy.
One specific example I just would like your opinion on would be, what about the pillar story that caught the secretary to the USCCB on Grindr?
Grindr one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's adults. I mean, I guess we're getting to the point where, yeah, I mean, see, public sin. I guess public sin does have to get called out too. I mean, we're getting at the point. I mean, I'll be honest. Back when I had just had my conversion, you mentioned Spotlight earlier, Anthony, and I don't know if anyone knew that was. I was living in Boston for 4 years up to that. I graduated Boston College in 2000. The Spotlight, that's the section of the Boston Globe that did the story on all the priests that molested the children. That actually came out in 2001. The reason they didn't run it is because 2 planes hit the Twin Towers in Anthony City. So they waited until 2002 to release that. Well, I had just had one of my conversions. Too bad I need so many. I just had one of my conversions. And when that came out, I thought, well, it's true. It's really horrible that the priest did this, but the liberal media, they're really bad, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think we all did that back then.
Right. And now it's 20 years later. You know who's got a great talk on that? Janet Smith had an amazing talk at the Coalition for Cancel Priests. She's like, hey, just a couple bad apples, right? We all kind of did this damage control where now we're looking at this and we're like, maybe the liberal media hasn't done enough to expose these priests who've harmed children.
Look, I think when sins come to light, it's actually the best disinfectant. What I would say is the person that's doing it better make sure.
Exactly.
Better make sure it's true first off, because there comes a point where you get into slander and things like that. But also, you're casting stones. So I mean, look, I think it should be brought to prayer. That's all I would say.
And maybe one of the differences between Pio slapping the guy who called a bishop a whoremonger and the Pillar article against Monsignor Grindr is Grindr is a public app, right? So you've already brought your sins publicly once you're on the app.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's true.
But again, anything that harms children, obviously, those priests need to be in prison. In the Middle Ages, you know what happened if you did that to a child as a priest in the Middle Ages? You were just executed.
Yeah.
Which would
probably degraded first, like the actual rite of degradation.
Oh, that way
then executed.
Take the stuff off. Hey, rip your skin off your hands.
Yeah, exactly. They scrape the oil that is used to consecrate the hands off.
Wow. We did some cool stuff back in the Middle Ages, man.
Well, it's like that scene from Beckett, right? All of them with the candles, and they blow them out and stomp them on the ground.
Tomorrow's his feast day. I said to you guys on text earlier, maybe we should have done that one. In fact, any man-on-man priest in the Middle Ages, according to Pius V, deserved execution. He's a saint. It's not my words. Pope St. Pius V. So all
right, let's finish this. Let's finish this scene out. And because it comes down to another thing, like what you're really seeing here is Padre Pio's ability to read souls as well.
Yes.
I mean, this man, he could read your soul. You could not go and BS St. Pio.
And Anthony, you just made a great point I didn't notice. Maybe the bishop wasn't a whoremonger. He also may have been reading his soul to see, he didn't know what he's talking about, and maybe he knew. I mean, I think it's understood even if a bishop were a whoremonger, he still shouldn't say that. But I mean, you made a great point like 3 or 4 minutes ago.
Make sure it's true.
He may not. Yeah, he may have just been repeating a rumor.
Yeah.
The English dub, instead of him saying inveterate sinner, he says libertine, which suggests that
do know it's true, because in the extended version we do see the bishop with a woman. So
yeah, that's true.
Right.
but he does seem to be accusing the bishop of the sins that he himself is guilty of.
Right.
And like you said
Exactly.
earlier,
Right. So
if you're going to go after the hierarchy
I gotcha.
for moral failings, you better be sure that you
better be sure
also are
you're
not guilty.
It's like
That's a
it's like
great
if you're up on YouTube and you're telling people you shouldn't be watching pornography, like, and you're watching pornography, like you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, you see this over and over in a lot of people. The very thing that they're speaking out against, they fall for. I mean, look at I mean, I not to whatever, but Michael Voris, the things that he railed against every single Vortex episode, and it turns out he falls back into that occasion. So you really have to be on guard. If you're going to call somebody out for something, you better have that thing under control in your own life, because
and the reason, at least as far as I can see, the real reason for that is because if it does come to light, then you've kind of hurt that cause, right? Because of the hypocrisy. Someone is less likely to take, even if what you said was exactly right and is true, like someone who does rail against pornography, but when it comes out that you yourself are a hypocrite, then people are just gonna ignore it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we also forget humility. We kind of have, there's a lot of cool talks on spiritual protection, spiritual warfare on YouTube now, and then we kind of have in a different part of our Catholic brain humility. We forget humility is part of the spiritual protection. You could even make the argument it's the entire aspect of spiritual protection, or it's at least the bulwark of spiritual protection. So when you lose that humility against another, like, you actually lose the spiritual protection that you would have against those sins that you're calling out. So like you said, Anthony, you really got to make sure you got it down.
Yeah. Do you ever read Humility of Heart?
No, I don't have to, because I'm so humble.
So it's a book that we used to give away on trivia all the time. It's such a good book.
Wait, trivia? What's trivia?
Yeah, we shouldn't even mention that. You get people try PTSD, but we used to give it away on trivia all the time. It's a small book. It was like $12, and I would send it out to the winners, or whoever I chose to pretend they won. But he talks right early on in the book. It's like you could get to heaven if you aren't the greatest faster in the world. Like, if you don't commit great acts of fasting, you can get to heaven if you don't do great acts of charity, but you cannot get into heaven without humility of heart. It is the prerequisite for everyone to get into heaven. If you do not have humility, you will not see God. And that's a scary line to hear, right?
In the positive, I heard this from an SSPX priest. So this isn't some liberal priest preaching this. And I heard maybe 6 months ago an SSPX priest preach this. He talked about a monk who died, and the monk was late to all of his hours, lunch, all these different things. And, a lot of those old school stories of religious dying who didn't fulfill their roles, when they appear from the afterlife, it's usually pretty terrifying. They're in the flames of hell. Why? Because I was late to hours, little hour, And so he appeared from the afterlife to another monk after living a pretty lazy life, and he was already in the glory of heaven.
Yeah. And
the monk on earth was like, that's great, but how'd you get there? And he's like, because I gave everyone on earth the benefit of the doubt. And then this priest really preached on remember how our Lord says, the measure with which you measure will be measured unto you.
Yeah.
And I thought this was pretty amazing coming from an SSPX priest. He wasn't telling people to be lazy and to show up late to everything, but he showed that, like, if you give people the benefit of the doubt, in some sense, this isn't an exact one-to-one correlation, but if you give people the benefit of the doubt in life, that's going to come back to you at your own particular judgment.
I would say, like, what you're really doing there is, it's not even just assuming the best in everyone. It's really saying,
right,
there go I, but for the grace of God, is what you're actually saying there, right?
Yeah.
Giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. It's not saying, well, you're not downplaying the severity of what they did. You're just recognizing that you could very easily end up there if God's grace wasn't protecting.
Yeah. Oh, and to answer Paul, no, it was Father McBride who preached that. Yeah, but even that phrase there, but for the grace of God go I think that's a great line if it actually has true humility of heart. But a lot of people say that, like, I'd be such a sinner like you if it weren't for God's grace in my life. Even that line, I hear what you're saying. I don't think you meant it like that, but I just want a little asterisk on that line.
Well, I want to give you an example of this.
Yeah.
My wife and I were talking about, we'll say it's a hypothetical couple who has an open marriage. And my wife was like, I cannot believe anybody could do that. And I said, that's because you have a good husband. But I promise you, if when we got married, if I had had a mind like that, I could have led you down that road, because wives follow their husband's lead. So this woman married a husband who just is leading her to hell. Like, you really don't really, like, I don't mean there, but for the grace of God go I, like anybody, but yeah, man, like,
Yeah.
if you
really mean it, it's a great phrase.
It just really, because I just know that I could have led my wife down that road if that was something I wanted to do. I just know I could, because she would follow me anywhere. That woman, this woman follows me everywhere, you know? So it really does come down to situations like that where, and let me tell you something, if you're a guy and you are looking at filth on the internet, don't think you can't let your mind go down that road. Like, there's anything you could get to if you allow yourself to go down there, right? I know people who look at a heroin addict and go, no, I could never. What? Most heroin addicts I know went to the doctor for a backache. They got some Vicodin. Next thing you know, you're taking a little more than you should have. I mean, there's just, but I 100% agree with what you're saying. I just know people don't recognize the capacity to be totally depraved in themselves often enough.
And that's what's so, now as we enter the scene again, that's what's so great about the scene is he smacks that pride out of him for him to realize he needs a real conversion himself. He doesn't have time at this point to worry about the bishop. You know, and that's where really Michael Voris's thing was a gift from God. I shouldn't say whatever he fell into was, I don't want to say that was a gift from God, because God would never inspire that. And we still, by the way, don't know what it was, but like God allowing certain people to fall publicly is for
their own good,
you know, and I think like, that's where I see what happened to Michael Voris as the beginning of a true, I mean, whatever happened in 2016 probably affected a temporary conversion. I like Michael Voris. I've had him on my podcast. I got nothing against him. But whatever happened,
we should be praying for him.
Whatever happened in the last 2 months to him, I mean, I don't give up on him. I see this as like the beginning of a really deep relationship with Christ. And this is what you see in the scene that we're showing. You know, him getting slapped by Pio. Was he right about the bishop being a whoremonger? Maybe, maybe not. But Pio cares about the soul in front of him.
Yes, 100%. Like, he's not, what he's really concerned with is the soul of this man who's saying that. And he just knows what he has to say to him to break his heart, like to break through to his heart. So let's finish it out. He's got to break through to his heart, right? So he knows he's got to, this guy needs tough love. This guy is not, you know, so.
And I think in real life he did hit some people, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he would women would come on the confession line with makeup on, and he'd say, "Get out of here, you clown!" Like,
he used words harsher than a clown,
right? But I'm just saying, like, this is look, man. This is kind of what I love about him, though, because he wouldn't say it to anyone. He said it to the women who, when they heard it, something would happen in their heart, and they'd recognize the vanity that they were displaying there.
Yeah. Is that what you try to channel when you tweet about Lauren Boebert?
Something like that, because that woman needs.
You're too harsh on her. I'm from Colorado. I can say that. You're too harsh on Lauren Boebert.
She needs to go back to her husband. Let's just say that.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. So now he goes, look, everybody there is shocked that he said that. I mean, he's a harsh man, but holiness can look like this. So now this guy runs out into the woods. Why don't we just skip ahead a little bit, and like maybe you could like go a little quick. So he cries out in the woods, but I want to get back to when he comes back in. Oh yeah, let it from here.
Vai via dalla mia vita, vai via, chi ti conosce, vai via, vai via.
Spends the whole night out there. There's one little criticism I'll have of it. I'm sure Father Nick's will have the same criticism.
Is it about the absolution he gives?
Yeah, that's the only thing. But
No.
but you gotta realize the people making the movie maybe don't understand fully
what form and matter
you know
are.
what I mean? It's very modern and
Sure.
Allora, Fedendo?
he calls him a snake. What's up, you snake? Long night, huh?
A mo che votano? Confessarmi. Devo confessare? Non ne hai bisogno. I peccati poi me l'hai detti stanotte. Te li ricordi? Voi mi dovete aiutare. Io voglio cambiare vita, io voglio trovare quella pace che cerco.
One more act of harshness before pure love here.
Right here.
Tu a me la vieni a chiedere. Io non tengo nulla di pace da quando sono nato.
The guy's like, what?
Sei assolto. Vieni qui.
So I wish he would have actually said,
Except maybe, I mean, if he heard his confession through bilocation, as he just admitted, he could have given an absolution via bilocation already.
That's true. Yeah.
I hope so. I love that scene, man. It's like, it was just such a perfect way to show that holiness, it can take that form, man. Like you can't just think everybody's like Mother Teresa where you're starting field hospitals everywhere. You can't think that every saint is going to be like Saint Teresa of Avila where she's this great spiritual writer, or Saint John of the Cross, or every saint. What you're getting in a saint is an aspect of the personality and spirit of Christ. Each individual saint just displays like a different aspect of Christ's, whether it's his personality or something about him. So every saint will look a little bit different. And I think that's why even in heaven, when this is kind of like the conversation we had when we went to Pennsylvania. Remember, we were talking like we were having the argument over whether we'll eat and have bodies in heaven, and we were arguing about.
Oh yeah,
but I think that
right.
every saint in heaven, the reason that there's a hierarchy in heaven and the reason that you can build treasure in heaven is because no saint will look the same in heaven. You will see a different aspect of God because God is infinite. You could never have one person other than Christ actually show everything about God in a person. So I think each saint is going to show a different aspect of Christ in them.
Yeah, there's gonna be a diversity of that. You know, and one thing I love about that, guy, since we were talking about like kind of internet calling people out, the Catholic world, in some sense, he's sort of the image of this current Catholic traditionalist on Twitter that we all can fall into. You, me, Anthony, Rob, me, a bunch of anonymous people out there on Twitter. A lot of the anonymous trad accounts are the worst. But like, I really think there's a temptation out there to have this very superficial relationship with Christ while spending all this time on Twitter, calling all these other people out. Yeah, I was thinking of the Bugs line of Father Ripperger when someone put that on the screen, and Proximus. That's exactly what I thought of. I thought Father Ripperger was going to talk about flowers. Nope, bugs.
I never heard him say that, but what a brilliant, what a brilliant
way
insight.
God
like
loves
it sounds so
diversity
silly,
is
right?
bugs.
But it's like, I think God likes variety. Look at all the different kinds
Look at all the
billions and billions of insect species.
Yeah. But like, he's this example of someone who like likes to call other people out for sin. And not just that, if you notice the guy he calls a skunk, he loves looking holy, having holy friends, having religious talk, knowing what's going on in the church, but he has no relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what gets knocked out of him. And it's not just that he's a hypocrite. It's not just that he's focused on other people's sins. He kind of likes the groupie mentality.
Yeah.
But
he's going to see Padre Pio. He's hanging out with all the church. But wow, I'm so glad you said that.
Right.
That actually,
but what's really
struck my heart a
inside
little bit there. I think I think
I'm preaching against myself. When I say these things, I'm mainly thinking of myself. You know, what do I need to change in my own life first?
Yeah. No, but I even think about the time when I was away from the church. Like even look at a guy like Steve Skojak. He's away from the sacraments right now, but he can't help but pay attention to what's going on in the church, right? He's still like every time like a big thing in the church happens, you'll see he still has to make his comments and he'll still say things. That's why I really do have hope that Steve will come back. Because there's like even though he says he's left, I really do think he like deep in his heart he knows it's home. The church is home.
Yeah, I think back.
And I left the sacraments for a couple of years and I came back and I really do have a very high hope that Steve's going to come back. But yeah, we can all get caught up in thinking watching YouTube videos is a spiritual life. We can all get caught up in thinking just because we have some Catholic friends and go to mass on Sunday that's a spiritual life, but that's not enough. Really not. If you're not spending time in prayer speaking to God.
And Pio knew that was one of the, you know, there's other people you slap who are doing that, and they would actually just end up farther from Christ if you did that. So like he knew not just that it wasn't just was what he needed, but he was one of the people that could handle it.
Yeah.
And he talks about it in the next scene. He talks about how, remember, he talks about actually being a planter or a gardener, and some people need a certain type of pruning and other people's don't. But you have to know, and I think that's a gift given to good priests in the confessional, is, you know, like St. John Vianney said, be a lion from the pulpit and a lamb in the confessional.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes Pio broke that because he knew what people needed in the confessional. But I think as a general rule, that's pretty good for a priest. Be a lion.
I think he was also very gentle in the confessional at times too, though. I think he really was, because he had this gift to read a soul.
Yeah.
The man knew what each individual soul needed to hear. So it's you know, because you do see he's very gentle with some people in the movie. Like that, he's not this smacky in the face with everybody. You see the different ways he approaches each person, but there are some people that need tough love. I mean, I'm somebody like that. Like if I went to see Pio, I don't like when a priest gives me some silly penance, like go say one Hail Mary for world peace. I mean, I've heard that 50 times. I want a priest to give me something challenging because the sins I just confessed are serious. And
I hate when I go to a Novus Order priest and I get something like your penance is to love Jesus more. I'm like, Father, can you please give me a penance I can complete before I leave the church? Because that's a lifetime penance and you're not supposed to give a lifetime penance. They think it's all soft sounding, love Jesus more. I'm like,
no, give me something specific. I have to go and do something to atone.
Yeah. You have to do something. And then, you know, and then you also have the middle of the road ones where he's not too harsh, but not too soft. And that's one of the ones I picked for one of my scenes with the movie star. Remember I'm going to show you guys later the clip of the movie star. She really loves this guy who's not her husband. And Pio's somewhere between harsh and tender with her in that. He's both, actually. You really see his...
Is that the scene you want to watch next?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right, let's do that scene because I love that scene
too. Let me see what I called that on Google Drive for you, Rob. I think I called it...
you called it movie
star, yeah. We can just watch it all the way through, just 2 minutes long.
Oh, 3.5.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry about that. You can talk through it if you want.
Man, these episodes, you don't realize how long they go, right? Like,
already an hour.
We're at an hour already. We still got 4 clips to play. This is...
Non sono qui per mio padre, ma per l'uomo che amo.
Lo so che lo ami, ma so anche che non è il tuo uomo. È il marito di un altro, vero? C'è un brutto male. Ai medici gli hanno dato pochi mesi di vita. Ma non sarai certo tu a salvarlo. Se tu non lo lasci, lo farai morire nel peccato.
Ma padre, io lo amo. Come faccio a lasciarlo?
Scegli. O il tuo amore o la sua vita. Adesso vattene, va.
Ma padre, io non posso.
Basta! Non pretenderai che io ti dia pure la soluzione, no? Soffri se sei capace, eh? taci e prega. Latina.
Pause it for a sec. Oh, you love him, do you? Oh, you love him. You love him so much that you're willing to let him die with his soul in mortal sin so that he spends eternity in hell. That's how much you love him? That's what he's saying to her, right? Like that is, but it's, oh, look, he will be healed, but you have to leave him. Like so I had a priest tell me one time, we were at a weekend retreat, and the priest, he had some spiritual gifts. And when I went up, this priest didn't know me from a hole in a wall. And he said to me, you need to pray for your father's conversion. And that has sat with me for years now. And when I was quitting smoking, it really dawned on me, like, okay, you want your father to convert? How much? Are you willing to give up this thing that you're addicted to for your father's conversion? And that has been how I've been able to stay away from smoking. I really think the sacrifice of giving something up that I loved so much will eventually lead to my father's conversion, right? This woman, you love him. How much do you love him? Do you love him enough to actually save his soul? Because that's what we're talking about right now. You will save his soul if you give up something that you love.
And you know what I was impressed. Oh, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
I was just saying, contrast the message that Padre Pio, well, at least this movie, portrayed him giving to that woman compared to the recent document from the DDF.
Well,
I mean, it's 100%.
Vincent put in the live chat. Did you see? You put it up on the screen, Rob. Vincent put in the live chat. Irregular couples ? There it was. Yeah,
that's what they are, right?
That's
an
exactly
irregular couple.
So which one is love? Which one is charity? We all know the answer. You don't even have to answer it.
No, and that's it's this false sense of love that they're pushing out, this false sense of mercy. Like, look, it is one of those things where you could see how some people could be confused on this issue, because you do want to show compassion to somebody, especially a sinner. Jesus was merciful to sinners, but that understanding of go and sin no more is so vital to the point of it. And John Paul II really did show mercy when he said, look, you're in an irregular relationship. You have to live as brother and sister. Like, that is look, you have children. How much do you love your children? Do you love your children enough to live a chaste life, even though you have new children with this new husband? You have to live as brother and sister. You have to be chaste. Do you love your husband? You love him enough that you won't send him to hell? Because that's what will happen.
But this is a really deep rabbit hole. I don't want to go down too deeply, but even Pope John Paul II's documents on marriage and Pope Benedict XVI's documents on marriage had tiny little fissures.
Oh, of course.
They had little fissures on irregular couples doing X, Y, and Z and approaching the sacraments and stuff. I mean, it wasn't as full blown.
No, but I think that you could make a case for where that, look, at least you're not continuing in your sin, right? But then you could look, if somebody's going to lie and say, oh, we're living as brother and sister, people are going to lie, right?
Right.
But at least telling them the truth, where if you are continuing a sexual relationship with, even if he's your new husband, he's not really your husband. You are his concubine. Like, you have children with him, but they're illegitimate. They are technically bastards, right?
Yeah, I'd have to go see what the document says. Little different topic though. Did you notice, like you mentioned this earlier, Anthony, this movie was made by Italians in around 2000. It's not made by traditionalists. And like, you're Italian, so I think I can say this without offending all your Italian listeners. Well, I think if I do, well, let me put it this way. If I offend them, I'm also offending you, and you can tell me. But, I've been to Italy 5-10 times. There's sort of this sense of like, if it's love, it's love,
Right.
And so I think a
lot of Europe is like that.
Yeah, all of Europe, yeah. And so I was really impressed that like non-traditionalists making this movie in 2000 still included this scene where Padre Pio says, I know you love him, and it's in quotes, I know you love him, but he's going to die in sin if you do this, you know? So this very notion that eternal life is more important than temporary happiness, that's a very traditionalist idea that doesn't fit in with like someone Aurora Virgin put on the screen there, not very pastoral. And so that's one reason
But
I
actually
love that.
he is very pastoral.
He is
That's
very
the irony
pastoral.
of it.
Yeah.
The irony of it is how could you claim to be being pastoral if you're pastoring somebody to hell? If you're leading that person to hell, there's nothing pastoral about that. It's absurd.
That's right. And there's modernism sprinkled through this movie, but this is one reason I picked this scene is because you see everything for him is in the view of eternity, not how somebody feels. Everything is in view of God, not human respect.
Rob, does your seeing it in Italian with the subtitles change a little bit of your opinion on it? I know the movie as a whole, like you had a hard time with, like your issue with it was hard to kind of follow the storyline. You didn't know much about what was going on outside of like the attenuating circumstances that maybe he would be acting a certain way, things like that. Because I know you're a history buff, like you were hoping to see more of that.
Well, I think just comparing it to the last movie we did, A Man for All Seasons, I think if you didn't know much about St. Thomas More, you come away from that movie with not only a sense of him as a person, but also a pretty good sense of his overall story, right? You don't have the dates and all the gritty details. Whereas in this, you know the narrative. In this, especially now seeing Italian, like, yeah, you definitely get a sense for St. Pio the person, but it's very disjointed.
I think you have such
in a
an
narrative
historical,
sense.
Analytical way of seeing things.
100%. I'm very analytical. I want to know, is what Pio saying at that point because of a certain event that just happened, or not, stuff like that.
You see the difference in you and I a lot in this because I'm very sentimental.
Yeah,
right. Like we always point that out. Like I'm very sentimental, and I see this movie makes me sentimental. Like I fell in love with Pio's personality in this movie, where I totally understand because I know you, and I know you. Like the other thing is with A Man for All Seasons, it's a very dialogue dense movie, right? That whole movie is just
the writing was incredible.
Phenomenal writing. Yeah.
The seeing this in Italian now, it's better, but I mean, you're comparing Golden Age of Hollywood compared to a 2000s Italian TV series, right? So it's not gonna be the same, right. But
yeah. All right.
And so you see back to the scene, you see that the tenderness that he understands where, like, it's like, Jesus with the woman at the well, he actually understands where she's coming from first and then has the harsh challenge. And you see the same thing here. He understands where she's coming from. She loves him. She says she loves her man. Yeah, I know you love her, but he's not your man. That's such an amazing thing. Slams the door on her. And then we see, and as the scene continues, the effect. And see, this is where St. Thomas Aquinas talks about human respect. Human respect, I mean, the sin of human respect doesn't mean you're respecting humans. There's too many traditionalists that get that wrong. Human respect means you're not supposed to respect one person above the other person based on their status, right? And this is where you see a perfect example of Padre Pio. He already knows it because he's reading her heart. She's a super famous movie star. There's people coming in asking for her autographs as she's going into the place. She just wants to go because she's heard of this cool friar. And what is one famous person supposed to do with another famous person? You go and meet them.
Mm-hmm.
She probably thinks she's going to get a little bit of a pass.
Special attention.
Yeah, special attention.
So she got to cut the line with the confessional.
Exactly.
She'll get a photo op out of it.
And what does she get? She gets the confession door slammed on.
But he's still like, I'm so glad you picked this scene because he was still so gentle with her.
Yeah, he was.
He was so gentle with her and still told her the truth. So let's finish the scene out. Let's see how it goes. I forgot about this scene.
And she leaves crying like your man with the mustache. And it hurts, like,
too.
It kind of hurts him to do it,
You see, all these people have such introspection after having an encounter with the man, right?
I love this
deep introspective scenes. Like after an encounter with Padre Pio, your heart was changed. It was like having an encounter with Christ. Yep. I mean, that's really what it was like, right? Like an aspect of meeting Christ. Look at her, this penitent coming back.
pretty different than her cutting the line, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess she cuts the line again, but different way.
This broken woman. I love how the confessional lines are separated by sex too. Like he only sees women at sometimes and men at other. Like they don't even do co-ed confession. Man, that's great, Kimmy.
Che hai deciso?
Oh, I don't want to cover the.
Lo lascio, padre. Lo lascio. Perché si salvi.
Si salva, si salva.
Hey, pause it real quick. So the Italian right there was, I will leave him so that he be saved. It wasn't actually live. The Italian there was, I will leave him, subjunctive in English. We don't use the subjunctive a lot, but in Italian they did. I will leave him so that he be saved. And he says he will be saved. Now, maybe you can say bad theology. He doesn't know for sure he's going to be saved, but that's the actual line. It's not so he will live. It's using the word salvare in Italian right there.
Yeah. Well, he might have an insight into it, right? It's not. He's not saying once saved, always saved.
Someone's still on earth as far as final perseverance. But point is, I was just making a correction to the verb there. So
look, he knows. Okay, she's going to leave him. He's going to receive a miracle healing. Yeah. This man's going to have gratitude to God now, and maybe Pio has an insight into this man reforming his life.
Right.
God spared him.
That's right. But he does say salvare. I think it's the future reflexive of the verb. Yeah, he will be saved.
Yeah, Paul's got a point here. Compare Pio to how your average trad acts to their brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the thing is, I never want to not hold our own to account, right? Like I want to challenge our own to be the holiest of because we make so many claims about tradition. It's like if it's not moving our hearts and changing us and making us love more radically, then it's for naught. So it's like we better that's why things like this, conversations like this are good. I don't think people realize that when we do these, my favorite part about them is not even the movie, it's the side conversations that pop up about the different aspects of theology and things like that. That's why I really do like this movie series, man. I really hope we continue it, man. It's really great.
Tu avrai sempre come amica Gesù. Non resterai mai sola. Ecco ti absolva peccatis tuis. In nomine Padre, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti.
Padre. Voglio diventare vostra figlia.
Ma lo sei già. Non sei sempre stata.
I love that. It brings tears to my eyes. I just love that scene.
Like you've always been my daughter. That's why when you came in here, I did treat you with love and kindness, and I didn't just tell you get out of here. He didn't handle her like he did the other guy. There
was some similarities out night in the rain. But yeah, that's a great point, Anthony. Like I don't think she realizes it right at the moment. Probably within 24 hours, she realizes it after that scene. But like she has heard, because everybody knows they had all these prayer groups of women, and what does it mean to be a spiritual daughter of Padre Pio? It's a real holy lady. She thinks. Okay, so she says, "I want to be one of your, after absolution. I want to be your spiritual daughter." And what a perfect line to say. You already have been.
Yeah,
and that's exactly. You're right, Anthony. That's exactly right. That's why he had to treat her harshly because, I heard a story once. Someone came up to Pio who he had denied absolution to, and he came back 20 or 30 years later. And, by this point, Pio had heard like over 1 million confessions. And so he said, he ran into him, not in the confessional, but like in real life.
Yeah.
And I think he said, I'd like you to get in the confessional for you to hear my confession. But he opened his conversation outside the confession with, "You probably don't remember me." And Padre Pio said, "I do." And he pulled out from this part of his habit his name that he had written down, or at least the basics of his life, and showed him after 20 years and 1 million penitents, this one guy he had denied absolution to more than just one guy. But for some reason, this guy who thought that Pio had forgotten about him, no, he had remembered him for that long. So even his act of denying absolution wasn't a tough guy trad act. Even the act of
It
denying
always had
absolution,
the soul of the individual in mind,
exactly,
knowing that it would be best for his conversion.
It wasn't just for the I mean, I think a lot of us traditionalist priests, we aim towards denying absolution for the sake of only ourselves. And there's something to consider in that. Like if you see what is called a recidivist sinner, well, it's true that priests can go to hell for repeatedly absolving the recidivist sinner. But how many traditional priests, when we look at that, are only looking out for our own soul? It's like, if you're going to deny absolution for a recidivist sinner, you better be doing some pretty hardcore penance for him if you're denying absolution.
Yeah, priests that give a light penance, like there are instances where it's okay for a priest to give a light penance, but that's because he's supposed to do penance on behalf of that sinner, right?
That's
Like
yeah. That was another great St. John Vianney line is, why do you give such light penances? And a priest asked him, he said, because I do the rest for them.
Yeah, like you hit your knees and do penance for that sinner.
Yeah.
So what other, because we do have to wrap this up eventually. So what other scenes do we have?
Yeah, Vincent says denial of absolution must tear a priest's heart to do. Yeah, for a good priest, it does. It should, and that's where you see, remember in the scene we just saw, Pio puts his head in his hands after he denies her absolution. And I think that's an important scene to see, that he wasn't excited to just flex against her. He knew it hurt her feelings a lot, and he didn't want to. It's sort of like a surgeon, like, surgeons. I remember starting IVs as a paramedic on kids, and it's like, you don't want to start IVs on kids, but you have to, and that's the same thing. You have to do things that sometimes hurt people, and that, but it always has to be, I mean, you didn't start IVs on kids unless they needed it, right? and that's the same thing with everything in confession. If you're following the Holy Spirit, you're doing what's best for the soul, but it has to be really what's best for the soul, not just what you read in books.
What's the scene we got next?
So we have two left. Father, you named them letters, and then the last one you called miracles, end of life.
We can skip letters. I went to San Giovanni Rotondo, and one of the things that, I'll just say this real quick. One of the things I found amazing about there is they had like 20,000 or 100, I know it's a big range, but it was something like 20,000 or 100,000 letters in his place in San Giovanni Rotondo. And what really moved me about that was, you don't just get to sit around and be a priest that gets stigmata and bilocation and flying next to airplanes and raising the dead and stuff. Why I love seeing these 100,000 letters that are still there is it shows the natural, like the supernatural side of all of his miracles was built on the natural side of his life, that you don't have some angel writing those letters for you. I mean, maybe he did sometimes, because he had a lot of angels involved in his life. I don't want to doubt that there were probably supernatural things that happened with the letters, but most of them he wrote himself, So the only reason I picked that scene was to show, like, he didn't just get to sit around reading hearts, doing miracles, flying next to airplanes. He also had to write hundreds of thousands of letters, or he chose to, I should say. He chose to write hundreds of thousands of letters because he was a hard worker. So in other words, the miracle priests of 2,000 years also had to do the regular, boring, grinding work of any priest. That's my only point.
So I haven't read the hundreds of books, but I did love this one.
Okay.
It's just called Padre Pio by Reverend John A. Shug. He was a Capuchin, and I did really love this book. But I haven't read the others, so you might be better off asking somebody else on it. So I bought this book after I saw the movie, and I read it. I mean, this was years ago, but I really did love it. I probably should read another one.
Yeah. What's the one I read? Go ahead.
And what was the other scene?
Oh yeah. So then there's just two more. I don't know how much time we're doing, but we talked about how that one Monsignor kind of encapsulates how the hierarchy saw him. And so one of the scenes I picked was where, that really hypocritical, or at least cold-hearted Monsignor had denied absolution to that soldier. Pio gives that guy, the soldier, absolution by bilocation. And then you have this amazing turn of events when Pio asks this hypocritical Monsignor for absolution himself. So that's both in one scene. That's one. I think that's the next one I picked besides
that's
letters.
A good one. You know what other one is? The girl who winds up tending his wounds. She comes to him with her mother, a very stubborn college girl, and she wants to go away to college. and Pio knows that if she goes away,
Oh yeah,
something bad, she's going to be assaulted.
Right.
Like a sexual assault is going to happen to her. So he tells her no, and she's so angry with him. And then she comes back the next day and she finds out that the other girl that took her spot that happened to. And there's just so many different, they show so many different miracles that Pio really like. But the reading of souls is my favorite. Just him, anybody that approached him and thought they knew something, and especially the scene with what's his name? What's the what the heck is his name? Gemelli. When he comes to him and he wants to inspect his wounds, the way he handles him is such a great scene. Like, if you guys haven't seen it, you have to see it in Italian with the English subtitles, because you do lose a lot seeing the dubbed version, which is free on Formed. They used to have it the right way on Formed. I don't know what happened. Everybody's laughing at Capuchin. We actually get the word cappuccino. We get the name, the word cappuccino from the Capuchins.
That's funny. So if we only got time for one clip, I'd rather go to the miracles, because that's my favorite in the whole movie. But if we got time for two, I'd like to do the double absolution scene, and then what I call miracles was just Pio talking to God about his whole life. We got time for two or just one?
I don't think I have the double absolution one.
Oh, I just call it absolution.
Isn't that the one we showed at the beginning?
No, that was stigmata.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right.
We
You're
could
right.
just skip to. I don't know. Do we want to keep it an hour and a half?
No, it doesn't have to stay an hour and a half. I just, like I know us, so I know, like, well, if I don't want to go over 2 hours. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Like, I know us.
Let's roll absolution.
I like to keep it at 2 hours. That's all.
So background to this is the guy investigating Pio, thinks he's just a phony, a fraud, a charlatan, and then until Pio reveals, you can roll it while I'm talking. Until he realizes Pio's talking about. I'll be quiet. Just watch this.
Ti prego, vai avanti. Lei dice che io ho tradito la fiducia della gente, che l'ho ingannati. Ma io dovevo scegliere tra il giudizio della Chiesa e la miseria, la disperazione. Cristo che mi afferrava e mi diceva vai avanti. Io ne li conosco tutti i disegni del padrone, può essere pure che mi sono inventato tutti io. Adesso, anche se non volete, la prego, mi assolva. Non mi faccia fare la fine di quel povero ragazzo. Quale ragazzo? Quel ragazzo durante la guerra.
And ragazzo in Italian's a little closer to like dude or guy than just boy.
Oh man, I forgot how powerful that was.
Non ve la siete mai perdonata, vero? La paura è umana. E comunque l'ho assolto io.
So what he goes on to say there is, I absolved him for you, and the priest says, "What do you mean? You were in two places at once? That's what you're trying to tell me?" And that's the the instance of bilocation that you see, that Pio was able to be in two places at once, and he was able to bilocate. Like, there's stories of pilots during the war seeing Pio in the sky, and they didn't drop their bombs over San Giovanni.
It's a true one. Yeah.
You know, because
and you have these GIs tell these stories. I mean, that sounds fantastical to any of your listeners who maybe aren't like haven't read books of Pio, but I mean, you had like atheistic and non-Catholic GIs admitting these outrageous stories. There was a friar who diverted them from these bombs.
Yeah, they didn't know who he was.
They didn't know who he
was
was
at the time.
Yeah.
You guys are making jokes. I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm running a temperature. You can see, like, I'm sweating the whole episode. Like, I am so congested. I'm so glad we did this, though. Like, I'm sorry I'm coughing into the mic and stuff, but I'm really glad we did the episode still.
Good.
I'm just so, like, it's so amazing to me, like, these little side conversations that pop up from these, because I think the people that watch the first movie are starting to get what we're doing here, right? We're not just reviewing the movie. We pick a few clips to go, probably
Anthony has rabies from his cat, says the live chat.
But we pick a few clips that we think will spawn a conversation. It's not just that we like the clip. We know, like, oh wait, I have some thoughts on this. Like, if I was watching it with a friend, I'd probably pause the movie here and share my thoughts with a friend. So that's why we kind of been doing this.
And it's funny, you know, anytime you have like a traditionalist on Twitter say they prefer the Latin Mass, some smart aleck from Steubenville says that's Donatism to think that like sacraments matter on the holiness of, it's like, no, we're not talking about the holiness of the minister, right? We're talking about, can Protestants and Freemasons rewrite? But everyone loves to pull out the Donatist card if they're like a sophomore at Steubenville onwards. But like that scene that we just saw is so key against the real Donatist heresy, because it shows that Pio is willing to be absolved from an enemy in the church. Like, he still admits he has valid sacraments. And if you look at it, so before the whole scene when he recounts the bilocation, he says, absolve me, I don't want to die like this. The guy looks at him incredulous, like, I'm here to investigate you. You know, I think you're a fraud. You know, I don't like you. Why would you ask me for absolution? And it's because Pio believes in the priesthood, and he wants to remind this guy he's a priest, not primarily an investigator for whoever his superiors are. He's primarily a priest.
Yeah, it's a great insight.
Ready for the last one?
I think it was smart of this. It was a smart cinematographer, whatever the adverb is, decision to not have him bilocating it. Like, you know, they could have had him show up magically and absolve the guy as he slinks down from the doors being shot. But I think that was probably a pretty good decision, just to say, I absolve him for, like, we don't know how it looked.
Yeah,
where he was.
They didn't need some big tricky CGI scene or anything, right?
That's right.
Speaking of getting trash.
And by the way, I like Steubenville. I shouldn't have pinned that on Steubenville.
No, but it made me think of something today. Somebody said, somebody asked, okay, should we have Parolin, if Cardinal Parolin becomes Pope, be JP3? If this person becomes Pope, it would be Benedict XVII. Fernandez would be Francis II, or Cardinal Sarah would be Gregory VIII or something, you know? And somebody said we need JP3, and I said Francis is JP3.
I saw that. I was like, oh, Anthony's going to take some heat for that one.
I caught so many people. Like, I didn't even
look at the replies, and I knew you were going to have people. I didn't even look at a single reply.
I just said it to rile people up a little bit, but it's amazing how few people understand what I'm doing on that stupid thing. But it was just to rile people up. I wasn't. Like, people got so mad. It's like, he's nothing like John Paul would never write anything. But if you really think about it, man, you know what? There's a movie on John Paul II that I used to really love. It's a 2-part movie. Well, the first part is his young life, and the second part is his life after he becomes bishop. And then it shows the council and his life as pope. And the first time I saw the movie was years ago. I loved everything about it. And when John Paul II goes to Anthony's series, whatever that you post, when John Paul goes to the council, the first time I saw it, he's actually at the council talking about, we need to make changes and we need to, and I'm like, I thought nothing of it. But when you go back and you watch that scene, knowing what I know now, a lot of the things John Paul II is saying in that movie, you hear echoed in Francis, and it's very clearly echoed in Francis. And it's not just the Assisi stuff, it's all the ecumenism stuff, but it's way more than that. It's just about not being stuck in the past, and not like a lot of the rigidity stuff Francis says is kind of, you see little spawns of that in John Paul. And I love John Paul II. I was a JP2 Catholic. My conversion comes under John Paul II. I adored Benedict. I read all of the Jesus of Nazareth books, but even still loving them and recognizing them as valid popes and stuff, you could see, okay, you could see some of the mistakes they made, and you can still love them and you can still recognize them. There's a very big difference between those men and Francis. There clearly is, because those men always did try to hold the moral teachings of the church, despite some of their ridiculous liturgical opinions. But, you do see a continuity between John Paul and Francis when you really start to pay attention.
I mean, I don't agree with the Francis 1 equals John Paul 3 for reasons I can't say online, but a lot of your listeners already know about me. But I will say this is a fun fact to support what you're saying in an interesting way. Do you know who Pope John Paul II made a cardinal the same day he made Cardinal McCarrick a cardinal?
Bergoglio.
Exact same day.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know it was the same day.
It was the exact same day.
Yeah, it's the
Cardinal McCarrick made a
ecumenism
cardinal the same day as Cardinal Bergoglio.
After the council, the ecumenism stuff, it's like, for you to not see the major problem in ecumenism, the way it should properly be understood versus what they've done with it. It's just, like ecumenism should have always been conversations to help others understand the Catholic faith better, to bring them back into the church.
Or why don't we just take the first millennium? I mean, the first millennium, 1,000 years, that's probably solid enough for us to have a definition, right? For the first 1,000 years of ecumenism, it's Greek for whole house, and it meant all of the Orthodox bishops get to weigh in. So it actually had nothing to do with evangelization. So the original etymology of ecumenism simply meant eradicating heresy with the help of all Orthodox bishops of East and West. It had nothing to do with evangelization. So I think we just need to separate in our brains the two words evangelization from ecumenism, as they had for the entire first millennium of Christianity. So what Vatican II did is it hijacked an old term and injected the heresy of religious indifferentism into it. And that's just something that's written about by the 19th century popes. The heresy of religious indifferentism, in layman's terms, is any religion will get you to heaven. Well, that was placed in the Trojan horse of this term called ecumenical or ecumenism in Vatican II, under this title of, well, we're going to talk to people, dialogue, accompaniment. But really what's at the core of it is any religion can get you to heaven.
I think what really got that, I understand that there were seeds of this going on beforehand, but what I really think happened with John Paul II and Benedict specifically, what they witnessed in the Second World War with the Amish, what the Amish went through, I think really had a deep effect on both of them. Like Benedict's a German, he was in the Hitler Youth.
Right.
I mean, this is a man who was forced into the Hitler Youth. You're looking at John Paul II was in Poland, watching what the Germans did to the Amish in Poland. These events scarred these men to the point where they were just like, oh my goodness, look at what religious hatred can do. And I think that, like, you cannot separate those men from their experiences in the Second World War, man. That's why I said, if the Second World War never happened, the council looks extremely different. There's
it's so
none
funny
of
you're
this.
saying this is so crazy you're saying this. We didn't plan this. I was explaining this on a long phone call to a friend today, and I said almost the exact same thing you did the last 3 minutes on World War II and Vatican II.
Yeah,
almost the exact, because you come out of, the way I put it, maybe I shouldn't say it wasn't verbatim, but I said you have people come out of World War I and World War II and they see all this hatred, and you're going to kind of hang your hat on this notion we really can all get along if we try this new humanism. Maybe if we try this new humanism, we'll just stop killing each other. I would have.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had seen what they saw in World War
trauma
I,
they lived through, right?
yeah, I'd be like, we need to go back to the drawing board and try this again.
Somebody's asking about EMJ, but look, we're doing interregnumus right now. So we got Patrick Coffin coming on next. So we're trying to do a couple in a row, guys. We'll just Settle down. I was making a joke.
That's the. Are you going to have Patrick Coffin on?
He's
Yeah.
on our next show.
Good.
He's on Tuesday. Yeah, we got Coffin on Tuesday.
Sweet.
And then I think Rob and I are going to take a week off. Like Rob and I are both pretty worn. I mean, you guys can see I'm pretty spent. So we're going to take a week off, I think, just to spend some time with our families.
Yeah.
And then we'll get right back to it. We have I have a couple of people lined up that we're going to wind up having on. So, but yeah, so the next guest is Coffin, and then we're doing a week off. So
can I give an intro to the final scene here?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, so one of the reasons I love this final scene is Padre Pio's talking to God about his whole life. And I think sometimes we think of, or at least I do, I think of these saints who had all these miracles in their life as almost like they were so humble as to be oblivious to the extraordinary events in their life. And what I love about this scene is neither is he oblivious to the supernatural activity that he got this front row seat to see and really was sort of the medium for it all. So he's not oblivious, but he also doesn't take credit for it. He's just so thankful to God. And so, I mean, how many saints recognize the miracles in life? Probably all of them, but we don't think of them as actually recognizing the miracles because we think, oh, maybe that wouldn't be humble for them to recognize the actual miracles. So why I love this scene is he admits to God in one of the final prayers of his life before he dies, as he's looking up at the stars, really what a wild trip it's been between him and God on this, like everything he suffered for God and everything he suffered at the hands of the church and everything he suffered in the stigmata and all the miracles. And he even says it, and the miracles you've given me, And I love the fact he admits that in this kind of like final prayer scene of great thanksgiving that just really wraps up.
I don't want to forget about it. So let's watch that scene.
Yeah.
But I also wish we had shown the one scene. Remember where the woman's on her deathbed and she's ready to go home to God. And he's no, please God, heal her. And her brother and her Agostino's like, don't tempt God, don't tempt God, like don't test him or something, right? It's like that was a good scene too, man.
That was good, yeah.
Because Pio really, even from a young age, when he that first opening scene of the movie when the young boy has like spina bifida or something, and he's up at the altar and he prays to Saint Pellegrino, and is it Peregrino? Is it Saint Peregrino?
I think we would name him Saint Peregrine, right?
No, in Italian it's Pellegrino with L's.
But is
it Saint Peregrine?
Yeah, I think it's the same one.
Is that because that's your namesake, right?
Yeah, so Peregrino in Spanish is Pellegrino in Italian, like the water. It's not San Pellegrino. It's the same word as Peregrino in Spanish. Yeah.
Yeah, Peregrine. Peregrine.
And his father looks at him and he goes, Pio, what'd you do? Like that's a good scene too, even from a young age.
When I look at my child in church and say, "What did you do?" It's not because he just healed so miraculously.
And another scene that's really good when he confesses his father at the end, at the end of his father's life, right? His father can't bring the words to himself, and Pio starts naming his father's sins, and his father's so ashamed that his son knows he had the affair with the woman in America and all these things,
But he says yes to all of them. He admits it. I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a pretty beautiful scene.
While we're on the subject,
Caitlin Smith asked me why. So can I answer that real quick? Why did I? So if you look, I started a blog when I did the Camino. I walked the Camino twice, one in 2011 and one in 2015. I just started a blog just for friends to kind of follow me in the Camino. It sounds ridiculous in English. Father Pilgrim sounds like you need like a buckle hat and like a bugle gun or something. It sounds a little bit better in Spanish, but it was really just kind of a little blog for travels. I didn't ever expect it to be like an instrument of church reform and catechesis and online mental prayer and stuff at the time. I thought I was going to be in parish life for a long time. So that's how I got it. It's kind of a dorky name, Padre Peregrino, but I didn't have time to start a new blog.
Hey, we got a Protestant here. I hope we didn't say anything too offensive.
Harrison's in the chat a lot.
Harrison, watch this movie, man. You get a little insight. Do
you know what? The very best movie on Pio, the very best book on Padre Pio that I've ever read, and it's seen as basically the gold standard in English. It's a 330-page book written by an Anglican priest in Washington, D.C. I'll have to Google it and put it in the notes, but it includes all the miracles, all these other things. But the gold standard in English of Padre Pio's life was written by a Protestant, and it includes like more miracles than any other book I've ever read.
I'll have to check that out.
I'll have to Google it while we're talking. I'll Google it while
all
we're
right, let's play that.
talking.
Let's play the clip, bro.
Quanti doni, quante grazie, quanti miracoli mi hai regalato. Sei venuto a vivere e a soffrire dentro il mio corpo. Io dentro di te e tu dentro di me. Che grande mistero. Grazie Padre mio. Ma sono pronto. Quando vuoi tu.
Oh, you think about the heartbreak of those poor people when he must have passed, right? Those people whose lives he affected so much, who were around him his whole life.
Yeah. So real quick, Claire says Padre Pio, the True Story by Bernard Ruffin. That's the book I suggest to everybody out there. Padre Pio, the True Story by Bernard Ruffin. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's something else I thought of when I was watching that. Oh, my brain.
Rob, what did you think of him looking up into the stars, talking about you and me inside you inside me?
I think it shows. I think it does a good job showing how we can unite our suffering to Christ. You know, as kind of St. Paul talks about, that it wasn't necessarily just him suffering and offering it up, but it was Christ suffering inside him and him suffering alongside Christ. So I thought that was honestly really rather deep for someone in 2000 in Italy writing it. So
yeah, I wonder how the whole country reacted.
Anthony, did you catch that? Even Rob's compliment on your movie had a little barb in it.
Well, like you said earlier about marriage, like this isn't from the 60s like A Man for All Seasons was. Like, we're way into the into liberalism and the sexual revolution and all of that.
All of it. Yeah.
But yet whoever wrote this still had an understanding enough to put a line like that into the movie. So,
I mean, do you realize how few Latin Mass parishes are in Italy? Like, FSSP has like one or two. SSPX has, I think, a few. Like, diocesan Latin Masses, they've probably been mostly eradicated, being bishops under the Vatican. Like, you have to realize traditionalism is almost entirely destroyed in Italy. So the fact that a movie made in 2000 that kept this is pretty impressive.
I think people take very for granted what we have in America. I think the traditional movement is bigger in America than probably anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But you think about how playing Padre Pio in that horrific movie that Shia LaBeouf was in, how much that changed him, right? How much that affected him because he studied for the role. Sergio Castellitto nailed this role.
Yeah.
I mean, you could not do a better job than this man did.
Right.
I would love to have a conversation with him and ask him what kind of effect playing this had on his life, because he is Italian, right? And I think in general, most Italians do have like a general understanding of Pio, but I mean, this guy nailed his personality so well. I tried looking him up on Twitter to see if he's active on there. The last post he had is from like 2017. Facebook, same thing. Like, he's just not on social media.
And someone posted, did Italy go into national mourning? Yeah. I mean, Padre Pio is, besides Jesus, he's the most called after saint in all of Italy. If you drive, I remember I rented a car once and drove all around Italy, and pretty much every semi truck I saw had a picture, at least the majority had a picture of Padre Pio on it. So Marcus M said, no, France has the biggest traditional movement.
I can't agree. I mean, France is the size of New York.
Percentage-wise, they do.
Yeah.
But actually, I said the same thing, Marcus, to 2 SSPX priests on Christmas, that France is bigger than the US, and they corrected me, said number-wise, there's actually more in America. So I said the same thing. But yeah, I think percentage-wise, you're right.
Yeah, but it's concentrated in a small area. I mean, France is a pretty small country compared to the US, right? The US,
but we have more traditionalists in the United States than France.
Yeah, you have to. It's just,
but as a percentage of the overall Catholic population, I'm sure it's quite a bit higher.
That's higher,
if only because of how few French.
Yeah, so France is higher percentage-wise. US is higher gross.
Yeah, so they probably have fewer actual practicing Catholics, right? So when you especially add that number into percentage of practicing Catholics.
Oh yeah.
And then when you also and when I say that, I also mean not even necessarily how many traditional masses are said. You look at even our online presence. I mean, America has a lock on the traditional commentary.
Well, and this is what's so amazing. The fact that who in the Vatican is so obsessed with traditionalists. Do you realize we're 1% of the world's population? We are one, and I'm not saying we're the only good Catholics. I've met great Catholics in Africa, in India, all over the place. I'm not saying Trad's the only good Catholics, but it's weird. Certain people are obsessed with us when we are 1% of the entire world of Catholics.
Marcus, you're never a half an hour away from I had such a good line. I blew it.
It's like all my jokes at this point. I blow every one of my jokes.
Such a good line, and I blew it. I was going to say you're never more than a half an hour away from the Eiffel Tower, and I just
okay. I was totally SSPX. Boy, I got to take that back. SSPX has 27 missions and chapels in Italy. Okay, I was totally wrong on that. Thanks.
No, I think it's a lot easier for them to have multiple missions out of a single like priory in Italy, when you can get to nearly anywhere in the country by train in a couple of hours. Whereas here in the US, then they priory might have a couple of missions, but that's 6-hour drives, away from them.
I agree with Emily, who's been on my podcast.
Yeah, Emily,
I couldn't even bring myself to watch it.
So, I mean, even if you narrowed it down to just the Shia LaBeouf scenes, it's not even watchable because there's like immodesty with Our Lady and things like that. It's just so, I'm so happy that Shia LaBeouf had a conversion experience through it. And I really pray that lasts for him. And I love that for him. That movie was, first off, I mean, even if it wasn't on Pio's life, what a terrible movie.
So I'm glad. I thank Tyler for the correction on how many SSPX chapels are out there. Does anybody know if there's any diocesan Latin masses still existing in Italy? I'd like to know that. I'm pretty sure there's not. But
just the fact that the SSPX needs 27 missions in Italy says a lot about the diocesan presence, right?
But that and that also proves I was wrong in saying there's not many traditional. I mean, they're obviously mostly going to SSPX chapels then.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Let's see if I can use the Latin Mass Finder here to find a diocesan one in Italy.
Yeah, see if you can find one. I know there's I've offered Mass at the FSSP one in Rome, Trinità. Also Pellegrino in there. Trinità.
There looks like there's a lot of diocesan up in northern Italy, like Piedmont.
Okay.
Lombardy,
diocesan like Latin masses.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's very few. There's none in central Italy, like none around Rome, and then there's a couple down in like Sicily and Naples and things like that. But it's all up north.
Yeah, Tina, I go to a diocesan Latin Mass. Traditionalists didn't destroy it totally, but
you do go to a diocesan Latin Mass.
Yeah, I go to a diocesan. But
well, I'm glad I'm being proved wrong on this. This is good.
Yeah, so all these like blue ones up here, these are all diocesan.
Still compare Italy to France now, so I don't look like a total fool.
Yeah.
Surprised how many are in England.
A lot of diocesan ones in England. I wonder how updated this is.
Those are all English diocesan Latin masses. Now, but they might have one on a Friday afternoon,
right?
You know what I mean?
That
doesn't mean it's a regular TLM. Yeah. It just means there is one, right? So like we have a few that are like you know, you could catch one on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. or you could catch, you know, on, like even on my way home. Sometimes I'm driving home from upstate. It works out conveniently because it'll be Sunday afternoon at 2:30 in the afternoon, which is awful for the people that actually attend it. But it's good for me who's leaving upstate at 12 in the afternoon and I'm passing it at 2:30. So, but
cool.
Yeah, man, this is a fun episode. I'm glad we did it. What's our next movie? Do we know?
The Island.
What is it going to be?
The Island.
You guys wanted to do The Island?
Let's do The Island.
Now, this is an Orthodox movie.
As an Eastern Orthodox.
Specifically Russian.
Movie, a Russian Orthodox movie. It's free on YouTube. I am telling you guys, if you have not seen this movie, watch it before the next episode. There is going to be so much to talk about. We're really going to get into the understanding of the Holy Fool.
Yeah,
because this whole movie is based on a holy fool, but it's just, you're going to see some things in this movie where you might think we would because he does some funny things in the liturgy, right? You remember that, where like everybody's facing one way and he turns around and faces the other way. Now I'm interested to see your perspective on that, because he's not doing it in some form of modernism. He's doing it for his holy fool understanding. I can't wait to get to that.
And not to promote my blog, but if you look at my blog called Padre Peregrino, one of my last 4 blog posts was called The Holy Fools of Christ. And I name a couple Western ones like St. Francis of Assisi and St. Philip Neri. But the main goal of that blog, it's not really long, it's a short blog. The real goal of that is to define what a holy fool is. It's not just a clown for Christ. It's not just someone who makes fun of others or makes fun of himself. There's really a spirituality to it. So if you have a chance, go look at Padre Peregrino, and the blog is called Holy Fools of Christ.
Well, especially in the time when the world is upside down, a holy fool exposes reality. Right? Like we live in a time that everything is upside down. In a time that's upside down, a holy fool will show you reality. It really does work that way. So it's a very important concept to understand.
And Keith asked if this was a 5-hour. No, this is a 2-hour one.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes left, guys.
All right, and then Solitarius asked about the movie of Saint Joseph of Cupertino. That's called The Reluctant Saint. It's cute, probably not super accurate, but it's fun. We could do it one time.
It's black and white. I'm not watching it.
Oh, that's right. Forgot.
Oh my gosh.
I refuse.
The one black and white I'm going to overrule on this is I Confess by Alfred Hitchcock. That's one we got to do.
I will give you one. You get one. Unless Rob watches The Godfather. If Rob watches The Godfather, I'll give you.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We were going to do that.
I'll give you 2 if Rob watches The Godfather.
Sweet.
The next movie title is The Island.
The Island.
Island.
Ostrov in Russian, OSTRV. It looks like Oktpob if you look at the Russian. It looks like OCTPOB, but it's Ostrov, and it's Island in English.
It is a Russian movie, right?
It's Russian,
it's Russian with English
subtitles, and it's actually not made by Russian Orthodox. It's kind of made of the Russian Orthodox. They ended up being very accurate and both capital O Orthodox and little O Orthodox. But there's nothing against the Catholic faith. Yeah, here comes the subtitles again. There's nothing against the Catholic faith, so that's why I think it's safe for Catholics to watch an Eastern Orthodox movie.
I just feel bad for everybody that listens to this on audio.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a fun audio one.
This is not going to be an audio only podcast for you guys. So, all right, my voice is just about done. So we're going to wrap this up. Everybody, please go hit like, subscribe. 40% of the people that watch us aren't subscribed. So if you're one of those people, please hit subscribe. Also, check us out on Locals. We do, usually, it's been a little late lately, but we're going to do some Locals content soon. We will see you guys in the new year. Merry Christmas, everybody. And we will see you all on January 2nd.
Merry Christmas, Happy Advent, or Happy Epiphany. And don't forget to watch The Island.
We'll see you.